Hello, hello, family members, colleagues, and friends. Welcome to my Enda's Boutique YouTube channel. I am Dr. Eugene Pemberton. I am the founder of Enda's Boutique. And so this actually podcast is going to be uploaded to my bookstore YouTube channel. And so that's because I am spending this summer connecting and speaking to independent authors. And so I've already published one of my interviews, which is with Sydney Beale. So hello to my brother Sydney Beale, who I've known for so many years since high school. So we've known each other for decades, okay? And so I got a chance to speak to him and celebrate him on his newly released book. Well, today I want to do this before I release any other podcast. I said, you know what? I want to any other interviews, I want to talk a little bit about the book that I released at the beginning of this year. And this book is titled You Should Be Writing a Book. So you see the title and the cover of the book there. It is available. So you can purchase a copy of this book. It is available on Amazon. And so, of course, you can also go to my website and receive a copy of the book as well, purchase a copy. But I want to talk a little bit about why this book is important. I was actually working on this book for a couple of years and finally said, I am releasing this book at the beginning of the year because this summer I'm going to start talking to independent authors again. And I want to make sure that this book is out and released so that individuals who are looking and seeking to release a book will have an idea of what writing a book is all about, what the process is. And I know there are a plethora of books out there, but I wanted to write a book because I am a bookstore owner, a bookseller, and I've had an opportunity to speak to publishers, to speak to booksellers, bookstore owners, as well as independent authors. And because of my involvement in the literary of books and working with independent authors, I wanted to at least put together a very simple book that could be used for you as authors who are looking to and considering writing a book. So before I get into the depths of what the content of what's in my book, I want to share with you why I think it's important for you to write a book. When I was working on my last degree, and I'm saying that now because today is July the 3rd, 2000, July the 2nd, 2026. So I'm dating this video, this recording, because knowing me, I'll be back in school trying to earn another degree. But when I earned my degree in 2024, so I'll say that one of the things that I went in that process of earning that degree, and took me about 7 years, as I started really researching about African American women who, brought contributions to the area of STEM programs, STEM studies, STEMs as far as their careers for science, technology, and engineering and math. And I was so excited just to see the amount of contributions from just women, period, and then from African American women. And the other piece that I was excited about is that some of them wrote about their experiences. They put their experiences in writings, whether it was in journals that was later put into books, but also there were books written about them. And I thought about the fact that had we not had any type of literary out there in the libraries, online, available to look at their research, their writing, we would not know about their contributions, that they brought into the area of STEM. And even then, so these are individuals that I'm reading about. But then I thought about how many people have contributed towards the field of STEM that we weren't aware about. Women in the 18th century, the 19th century. And because if they were women were limited in those fields, being exposed to those fields, limited to be able to publish. So it's a whole historical piece that I'm not going to speak about today in this video, but so I just thought about the fact that there were so many women, I'm sure, that did amazing work in the area of STEM, but we don't know who they are because they weren't able to publish their information or it just wasn't written. So I just believe that everybody should write a book. Write a book about your experiences. It could be your own personal journal, your memoir. Back in the day, we used to have what was called diaries, but you can put, your diary together or your memoir. So whether you're male or female, whatever you want to call it, but let people know because this also helps for your generation, your legacy. It continues through, whereas your children may not appreciate your experiences in today's world, but as they get older they can appreciate what you went through and say, wow, I understand why my parents were like this, or I understand why my father made these types of decisions. I understand now why my grandmother was in education, and how she made these types of contributions and why she made these decisions and, what the outcomes of these decisions were. So I just say you should write a book, and you should write a book about your experiences. Or maybe you want to write a book because you have a very imaginative mindset, right? You are inquisitive, you're imaginative, and so you need to put all of that into a nice novel, because who does not like to read a nice novel? I love it. I love it. I'm going to tell you, one of my favorite pastimes is either binge watching something on television like Netflix or Hulu or whatever, or binging into a great, amazing novel just for me to escape from the regiment of education. Because during the spring and the fall, or the fall and the spring, I'm studying, I'm prepping, I'm putting together lesson plans. I am studying for my own education. I'm teaching high school scholars, college scholars. And so the drive of education is really strong in the fall and in the spring. The regiments, the schedule is really, really tight. And so whenever I need a breather, and typically that's in the winter when we're on winter break, and in the summer, which is right now, I'm on the summer break. I love to binge into an amazing novel just to take my breath and my mind away if I'm not trying to binge something on television. So if you are a novel writer, you need to get started to writing your book. Okay. So whatever it is, maybe you have self-helps. That's a really good book, sir. Really good books. My book is a self-help. That's what it is. You should be writing a book. So that's a self-help. All right. So, but either way, everybody should be writing a book. Okay. Just to say, I have a book that I have written. Okay. So now I want to talk a little bit about the process of writing a book, and maybe provide some expectations of being an independent author and helping you along the way with the process. And the reason why I want to do this is because since when I first opened my bookstore, my physical location in 2019, and I started working with independent bookstore owners, booksellers, as well as independent authors, some of the information that I began to gather and listening to, the process of what different people experienced, what they went through, I wanted to be more of an advocate for independent authors to help you along the way as you prepare to put together your book, and what you can look for and the expectations you can have as an independent author. So the first thing I want to say is, if you're deciding to write a book, congratulations. That's exciting. It's nothing wrong with it. I'm glad for that. Whatever your reasons are, whatever your why is, I'm excited for you, and congratulations. So, job well done. Get to the finish line if you're not there. And if you are, pat yourself on the back. Congratulations. Okay. You did it. You wrote a book. So now I'm going to just briefly discuss some of the chapters that I have in my book. And again, you can always go to Amazon to get a copy of the book. Go to my website at endaseducation.com to get a copy of my book as well. Okay. So let me talk about, and my book is broken into different parts. So the first part is titled Writing Your Book. And in my first part, it is broken down into 4 sections. The first section is laying the foundation. The second section the second chapter is planning and outlining. The third chapter is reading like a researcher. And then my fourth chapter in part 1 is revising and editing. Okay. So let me talk a little bit about laying the foundation. When, excuse me, whenever you are preparing to write a book, you want to lay the foundation. You want to define your why, choose your who, decide your what, and conduct your how. Okay, those are my 4 things. And again, I'm just going to give you a summary of each chapter. I need you to go get a copy of the book so that you can use this book as a guideline. But defining your why for writing a book. Okay, why do you want to write a book? Like for me, I wrote this particular book because I wanted to provide an easy guide for independent authors to write and publish their book. And it says that in the subtitle. It's an easy guide. Okay. I didn't want something complicated. I know that there are so many books out there that talk about the process of writing a book, and they're good books. I'm not saying anti any of those books. I just wanted to provide you, from my perspective, from my experiences, what I have noticed. I wanted to give you a guide of what I have seen that has been working in the year of 2026, It may change, things do change over time, but I wanted to give you a summary of what that is. So again, laying the foundation, you want to define your why. Why are you writing a book? Right now, I have in the pipes six books, six additional books that I'm putting together. Three I'm hoping to lay out this year, three for next year. But it's been a process. These books I have been working on, some for 2, 3, 4 years, so it's not something I've done overnight. But, again, I'll talk about that throughout this particular recording. But I've been writing the books. And so I have 3 books that I've been putting together for the last 2.5 to 3 years. And it is helping individuals who are preparing for their dissertation. Part of those books come from my own experiences. Other comes from some of the material and the content consist of my own personal experiences, but also just my own research, understanding and listening to others who have put together their dissertations and published. And so the third book I'm actually releasing in the trilogy was the first book that I started on, and that's going to end up being the third book. So go figure how it is. But that is my why. Why am I writing a book? So you want to ask yourself why. Why are you writing a book? Now, I'm giving you the practical reason of why, but you may say, I want to write because I just want to tell my story. Awesome. There's nothing wrong with that. I want to write because I want to tell a story. Those are your novels, okay? From memoirs to novels. I want to write because I want to talk about history, Awesome. I want to write because I want to be an advocate. Love it, love it, love it. Again, you need to identify your why, define your why, because that's going to help you to go from the beginning of writing a book to getting to the finish line, okay? So your why is important. Then in chapter 1, I also talk about choosing your who. Who is going to be your target audience? So again, for you all, I'm talking to you because you're my audience right now on this particular recording is to independent authors, okay? That's who my audience is for this particular recording, independent authors. And so I have another channel that I record, and typically that's all things education, but this is focusing on independent authors, okay? So choose your audience and your niche. And when you become a writer, you definitely want to stick within that niche. So you want to grow your niche. You don't want to be all over the place. You want to solidify and grow your niche. For me, as an educator, oftentimes, I'm writing books that's going to focus on literacy, how to do this, how to do that in the realm of education. But I'm also writing devotionals because I'm a minister. I'm in ministry. So I, say, I do a lot of prayers for different organizations. I'm going to start putting these devotions in a form of a book. But again, that's my niche. That's the other side of me that works well. So you don't want to, be so all over the place. You want to find your niche, build on your niche. That's going to be important because some of you want to become independent authors and become authors where you can use this as a way of source of income. And in order to do so, you're going to have to find your niche and build on your niche because that doesn't happen overnight, right? It's just like being an athlete. Being an athlete is a process. It takes time. It takes time. It takes time. Okay, I just wanted to say that. So you want to choose your audience, your target audience, and find your niche. And then deciding your what, the book concept. What is going to be the concept of your book? Again, and you need to narrow it down. One of the things that I've learned, even when I was working on my master thesis and my dissertations, whenever I talk to my department chair, my committee chair, my committee members, the one thing they would talk about is once you start developing your target audience, you want to get that concept and you want to narrow it down. You don't want your concept to be so broad that you try to grab everybody and lose everybody. So you want to lock in, and again, that word niche is really important, but what is your book concept? And then conduct your how for market research. Okay, you want to begin to look at how you're going to get this book out there. What is it going to take for you to get the book out there? Are you going to need to go out to different independent booksellers who have their stores? Are you going to need to participate in different authors events? Are you going to blog? Are you going to do YouTube? Are you going to set up any type of social media? Again, conduct your how. How are you going to market your research and your book? You got to know your audience. How do you connect to those people in order to get your book into their hands? Okay, so that's going to be important. My chapter 2 is planning and outlining. Now, this is one of my, I think, quirkiness of who I am. I love planning and outlining. For me, organization is key to all things Jean Pemberton. Okay, I'm going to say that. I do not function well in chaos. I do not function well when there is no organization. The I's have to be dotted, the T's have to be crossed. There has to be some sense of structure. And as a matter of fact, those who know me know I would get like real intense with the structure and then loosen it up over time. But usually I'm like real, I don't know, micro with my organization. And then I began to loosen it up as I began to see how things are breathing and become a little bit more flexible. So planning and outlining. The first piece that I do when I'm writing a book and putting any of my writings together is brainstorming ideas. I have post-it notes everywhere. Everywhere I am, there are post-it notes. There are post-it notes in my purse, post-it notes in my car, because I'm going to have an idea that comes to me and I need to write it down. If I don't have a post note, I'm texting it to me so that I can have it in my text messages to me, and then I'm going to write it down. So you want to brainstorm your ideas, okay? Once you have your book concept, your ideas can or should be targeted to that concept, okay? But you want to start breathing those ideas to make sure that that book comes to life. So make sure that you're brainstorming your ideas. Once you have brainstormed your ideas, and it's not like it's at the end, because again, as you write, you start thinking about more things that you can add to your book, and then you start thinking about what you can remove from your book because it's a little bit too much. But you wanted to put together some sense of outline. So me, typically, I'm a systematic person. Usually, if I'm writing, I'm creating sections, like 2 to 3 sections. And then within those 2 to 3 sections, I'm going to add chapters. Henceforth, this book that I've just talked about, my book, You Should Be Writing a Book, is broken down into parts. I have different parts. And then within each part, there are chapters, and that's how my train of thought is. So I have this big umbrella or a couple of umbrellas, and underneath the umbrellas are going to be subtopics, which helps me to organize my thoughts. So that's what you want to do when we talk about your outline. The other piece is you want to have an idea of word counting, okay? How many words should you have for your book? This is important because it gives you kind of a benchmark or a goal that you want to move forward with. And so you can easily research and say, what is a typical word count for a novel? What's a typical word count for a memoir? Word counts, number of pages. You can do that, write that down, have a goal, so that as you're putting your book together, you can have an idea on an average for a novel, how many word counts it is, how many pages you should have. Within each chapter, you should average this amount of pages to contribute towards the overall project, your book itself. I did that with my dissertation, my master's thesis, all the writings that I've done. Typically, what I would do is I would say on an average, how many pages should be within this chapter? What's the word count? And from there, I break it down even more smaller sections so that I can build within each part and make sure that the balance is there and that it makes sense. Okay, but that's for me. You may not have to do that. You may not need to do that. You might just need to have the big picture, what your word count looks like, how many pages should you have, and you might start moving forward, heading in that direction. Me, I break it down into smaller components because it's easier for me to work through that process and to chew on it and make my project come to life. And then you want to start building your routine, your writing routine. I'm in education. So typically for my writing routine is a lot more aggressive in the winter months, as the winter holidays and the summer holidays, because in education, I'm teaching in the fall and in the spring. And so when I'm teaching in the fall and in the spring, not only am I teaching, typically I'm taking professional development classes or I'm taking a college class, a college course. And so because of that, and then I'm teaching college students, I'm teaching high school students, I'm taking a college course, I'm taking professional development. So with all of those things going on, my writing routine is not as available or as set in stone as it is in the summer and in the winter, because I'm off the campus. And even though I'm still a little bit in education, I might take like a summer class, teach a summer class, or take a summer class. It's not as aggressive, so I have a lot more time to work with. So my writing routine is I pick it up a lot more, okay? for that. So you want to create a writing routine, and that's important. So that also helps if you have an outline. If you have your outline in place, then you could say, okay, based on my outline and my timeline. I didn't say that. I skipped that. I talk about timeline as well. Once you put your timeline together, then you can set your writing routine. So I didn't talk about timeline, but you definitely want to have a timeline. So for instance, for me, I put a timeline for each of my books that I wanted to release this year, and then a projection of what when I want to release my books for next year. Okay. Now, at the beginning of the year, the first book I wanted to release was this one, and I was able to do so in the first quarter. The second book, and I was trying to do a book per quarter. So the second book, I'm a little bit behind. I should have released it already in June. We're in July, but I started working on a certification, which put me a little bit behind on that. So again, the draft is there, the book is there, but there's some things that I have to work out. So my goal is to get it out sooner than later, because the third quarter, I have another book that I want to release, which partners with this book as well, and then move those two out of the way to release my fourth book in the fourth quarter. That's the goal. Sometimes your deadlines get pushed back. That's okay. You still want to continue to move forward towards the finish line, but at least put a timeline together so you can have something in front of you, an idea of what you want to do to get that book finished. Okay. And then create your writing routine to help build towards getting you to the finish line. My third chapter is titled Reading Like a Researcher. Reading like a researcher. Sometimes when I'm interviewing authors, independent authors, I may ask the question, what type of research did you do to build out your character, to, develop these chapters in your book? Even memoirs, you should have some type of research that you've done. Because yes, typically memoirs are about yourself and your own experiences, but you still want to research about that timeline. What else was going on in the world during that time and your experiences? What were the thoughts of other people? Even talk to people who were in your life during that time period. What were their thoughts? How did they view you going through your experiences? Their shared experiences with you as well. So you want to have some type of research, because that brings about livelihood to your book. So it's not just opinionated, right? It's not just your opinions. Not that your opinion doesn't matter, but it helps more solidify your book as an independent author. The other piece I really, really love is when you're researching, reading like a researcher and doing research for your book, you can add that to the end of your book as part of, your index, or as part of a bibliography or resources, to demonstrate that this information is balanced and solidified, not just by your own experiences, but you also had conversations with this person, or you read articles about experiences that happened during that time period. So I love to see at the end of the book where I see that those who have written these books, they're researching and they have evidence that they also have done research for their book. The second piece that I talked about in chapter 3, Reading Like a Researcher, is drafting your first book, drafting first. Whenever I put my books together, I would say, for all of these books that I have, they've been in draft mode, except for, no, they're all in draft mode. As a matter of fact, the third book that I'm releasing from this trilogy of the 3 books that are left, which is really the fourth book, that book I started 2.5, 3 years ago while I was in dissertation mode. And I just was using it as for me to gather information, provide my thoughts, my experiences, and to encourage other scholars who were working on the doctorate degree. So that was the piece. I started that before I started the other 2. But the other 2 were going to be finished before that one. Go figure. But again, I've researched. I have that information, and they're all in draft mode. Okay. So put your books in draft mode. That helps as well, so that when you return back, you're not all over the place. You can really center, and also you have fresh eyes on your draft to say, oh, okay, I see where I was going with this, but I might need to make some adjustments and head in a different type of direction, or continue that direction, but fill it out a little bit more. Okay. So draft first. You can edit later. So when I say draft, just put it all together. And I'm not saying throw it together, but put it together in the outline that you have. You might have to step away from it. That's okay. But again, draft first, and then overcome writer's block. There are a lot of different things that can contribute towards writer's block. I'm not going to use this video to talk about what those contributions are. I can say I've written a couple of ideas and some thoughts in my research and talking to other people how they overcame writer's block. That's in my book. So you can get my book, read that chapter. But I will tell you one of the things for me, writer's block came when I was teaching one subject, studying another subject, and then writing about something different. Too much was going on. Writer's block, overwhelmed with too many different things. And so it made it very challenging for me to focus and center on what I was writing. And so I couldn't get my thoughts together. Another experience for me with writer's block is when so much was going on in my personal life or my professional life. And so I had to put my book down to the side and focus on what was going on in my life, bring some resolution to my personal life so that I can get back on task. Another thing about writer's block is creating that space for you. You may not have the right type of space, or the space that you have is got old, antiquated, and it's not giving you the type of energy that you want. So now you have to create a new space, change up the furniture, change up the color, go to the library, go outside, create an outdoor patio. I love it. I love it. I love it. So sometimes writer's block could just be the environment, right? It could be the environment. I'll talk about all those types of things in reading like a researcher is overcoming writer's block. That's another way. One of the ways that I overcome writer's block is I may read a book that is similar and aligned with what I'm putting together for my book. And, that helps me with come up with some ideas. And I'm like, okay, I didn't see it from that perspective. Now, of course, if you're going to use what you read, you got to add that to your book as a resource and give them credit because they helped you along the way so that you could overcome your writer's block. Chapter 4, revising and editing, revising and editing. One of the things that I shared is when you're putting to your book together and you step away, when you come and return back to your book, you can do self-editing because you may see some sentences that don't make sense. Your typos may be there that you didn't see at the time that you was putting your book together. So you can do self-editing. Nothing wrong with that. You could also, and I do recommend professional editing if you have friends that are like librarians or English teachers, I would use them, ask them to read your book, help you with the chain of thoughts that you have in the book. They can also provide you with information that you will be helpful to organize your thoughts, make sure that your thoughts are flowing from one chapter to the next if you cannot afford a professional editor. Now, I would say invest in professional editing, especially if you're going to be writing several books, because then that demonstrates your commitment to your project. But again, if this is your first time putting a book together and you're funny, your money is funny, your change is strange, then at least have someone, maybe you can pay $100 or so to a librarian or to a person who is an English teacher, high school English teacher or college English teacher, or professor that can help you with your book. There are tools, editing tools. Now, of course, you have Grammarly, AI, so many different AI editing tools. My caution is if you do choose to use editing tools that are electronic AI editing tools, make sure that you're using those for just only that, editing, not writing a book, not putting the concept of your book together, just helping you with editing. Because it is true, sometimes you may get stuck on a sentence and you may ask the AI to help you reword the sentence or give you a better idea of presenting your information. That's okay, but you also want to make sure that you give credit. So if you use any type of AI, you must give credit where credit is due. Okay, that's important. So it's okay to use AI, but again, if you use AI, you want to give credit and say, hey, I use AI, and there's an APA format that you can use where you can give credit, okay? The other piece is, like I said, you can receive feedback from librarians. You can also have beta readers read your book. Family members can read your book as well. If you got some close people in your life that you can read your book and give you some really good critique, I would say use them as well. So that's part 1 of writing your book. Now, my book is actually divided into 2 parts. So for this particular video, I just wanted to give you a tidbit about why you should be writing a book and giving you a little bit of a guide on what you can do to prepare to write your book. I am going to come back and do part 2 of the video. Part 2 of the video, I am going to talk about preparing for publication and launching your book. That's going to be part 2. But again, For more information and details of what I provided to help guide you to write your book, please go to my website at endaseducation.com and you can click the link to purchase this book, and I would really, really appreciate it. All right, that is my time. I appreciate you watching. And to purchase books, you can go to my bookstore website, which is endasboutique.com. That's endasboutique.com. All right, you guys, enjoy the rest of your weekend. If you're watching this on July the 4th weekend, and if you're watching afterwards, have an amazing day. And don't forget, you should be writing a book. Take care.